it's definitely like a lot of love and then just some sour parts. So I'm not
Right.
okay. So I'm not gonna just like be
Well, I mean, but we'll touch on those sour parts. I want to hear it.
We
That's
can
like,
talk about the sour.
we'll get
I'm
there.
talking
We'll
about the
get
sour.
there. We'll get there. But Nick, first, if you want to tell everybody who are here with what we're doing.
All right. So we are here live with Sydney Mead with the Nebraska Cornhuskers Cup. Not a Nebraska grad or even a native, just has very strong family roots to the same place where Andres and I are from. Go Big Red. We finally got a third win on our season. Talk about like championship level achievement right there. Anyway, it's great to have Sydney on. She sold with Southwestern for 6.5-ish summers and worked with the JYD group, Go Junkyard Dogs, right? Remind me, what school would you say that you represented? Because you bounced around a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I bounced around because of recruiting. I would have said probably University of Wyoming for the longest. And then also South Dakota State. And then a little bit of Montana in there as well.
Cool. That's crazy. All over the place. And so let's just get in here. How did you hear about this crazy ass internship? What happened? How'd you get in? Who suckered you in?
Okay, so it was a layered process. It sounds weird to say this, but I also think I was like meant to sell books because I just so happened to have come from Rapid City, South Dakota, and there was a ton of book people from there. So by the time I was a freshman, someone had already tried to recruit my brother and he didn't go. But my best friend from second grade, both of her older sisters, one of my brother's best friends in college and one of his best friends from middle school all sold books, and every single one of them was like a superstar book kid their first and like multiple summers after that. So when I walked into the interview room, the guy, Brian Bakken, was running the informational meeting, and he was like, "Where are you from?" And I said Rapid City, and he listed off almost like 10 names, and I knew every single one of them. And so, it was I was an easy recruit. I was just like, "Oh, this is the job you do to make $10,000." Okay. So he actually had my friend Julie. She called me, and she wasn't even a book kid yet. She was in the interview process, but her sisters had done it. So she's like one of the reasons why I sold, because like we were gonna have our first summer together. So yeah, it was kind of.
I feel like that's unique. I feel like most people think they're going to go like work for an airline. They don't know anything about Southwestern. You like had the whole picture.
I actually didn't. I was pretty naive and dumb. Like I remember my dad told me that Mary Anderson went and was cold calling, selling books door to door. And I remember he said that when I was in high school, and I pictured her phoning.
Cold calling.
And I was like, oh, weird. And he's like, but she made a lot of money.
She was outside in the
snow,
no idea. Phone calls. It was cold calling.
Cold calling.
In the summertime.
Yeah.
Go up north.
So I had no clue.
So you were a freshman in college?
Yeah.
Okay, and what part of this, like, was it in the fall or in the spring? Like, what part of the year did you get recruited? Do you remember?
February. I was a February recruit.
So it was a post GRS, and poor Brian was like out there.
That may not be right. I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I thought I was late. Like I didn't have a lot of time to get ready, but maybe I procrastinated. So maybe I felt like I was late because I didn't learn my crap.
That semester flies.
Yeah, it does.
So when you first were recruited, what was your first impression of like all these like similar aged people doing this crazy thing? Like what was your opinion of, were they crazy and like a little loose, but also like inspiring? I don't know.
No, the Wyoming crew that year was just really down to earth, but they weren't like, I wouldn't say like, they were so real that they weren't the kind of people that you would be like, oh my gosh, like I'm so awe-inspired by you. It was more just like, oh, you're really friendly and nice, and it'd be nice to work with you all summer. So it wasn't like my recruitment was like this aspiration thing. I do remember, what's that story that they give you when they're recruiting you, and it's like it's about having your best day ever.
Oh,
Crap, I don't remember what it's called, but like
A little more
it's about
context.
like, say what?
A little more context, please.
I don't know. I don't remember. It's something. It's in like the selling 101, and it's like some story about like the guy who was hospitalized, but his brain was so positive that he like
Right.
came back from the worst injury ever, and like
Mhm.
they said it was because he had a good attitude. Does
Yeah,
anyone know?
and that reminds me, that might be the same story as
I don't know.
Roger's sight.
Yeah, so I
falls
read
over.
that, and then I decided I was gonna have like my best day ever at school, and I got up at like 5 the next morning and had like the most amazing day of like schoolwork
That's
and productivity, and I was like, the Southwestern thing, maybe they know what's up.
so they hooked you right away with that.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
was on the Kool-Aid from like day one.
Wow. And then so and you sold, what year that was, like 2010?
That was 08. I'm old school. I sold. Did you guys?
08. Yeah.
Did you guys sell volume libraries?
Were they
No, I have a copy though. It's somewhere in
Oh,
my
good.
car.
That's good.
The internet didn't exist yet in Southwestern.
I think Brandon Q and I started the same year.
Okay.
We had the same first summer.
Yeah. He was the number one rookie that year.
Yeah, I was 29.
Hey, that's a good day. That's the day
I'll
of
take
my
it.
birthday. That's good. And then so that was a
I
good
did
first
that for
summer.
you.
I knew. So that was your first summer, and then summers went on. Why did you leave? What happened?
We should wrap around to that one, but ultimately,
Save it for later.
I think I tried to leave 3 or 4 years in a row,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
This is the theme.
didn't.
This is the theme.
It just didn't
So
happen.
what was the most effective Jedi mind trick that they had to keep you going back summer after summer? What did they tell you that you believe?
Jedi mind trick.
All right. So I think, like, first of all, I decided to come back every year. So it's not like anyone else is responsible for me ultimately like driving my butt all the way to sales school. So that's on me. I think the first and best argument that always got used on me was that like my first 3 or 4 years selling books, life was like really good for me all around, like in school and in family life and stuff like that. And then after my 3rd or 4th summer, my family just like went through hell. Like my parents got divorced. There's just a lot of drama, and Southwestern kind of replaced my family. So I just had a lot of really strange loyalty to Southwestern, because when like I was on the other side of the state and my parents like were fighting, I didn't have anywhere to go for the holidays. So it was like a book person that would take me in. And so when it would become, GRS time and you're signing up for your following summer, it was like, we're a family, we take care of you, like we want to see you grow, so like you can't leave because you need to grow more. Like this is a great way to like make some money before you head out to whatever it is you're doing next, and like you'll have this confidence that your family couldn't give you. So it kind of in an unhealthy way, and not because anyone was being bad. I think truly like the people that were like fighting for me to stay were like trying to help me, but instead of just seeing that like I probably needed therapy, I didn't need books. But like there's this weird philosophy out there that like books is therapy because you work through your problems. And it's not.
It's like the movie Holes. Yeah, dig a hole, it'll help you.
Yeah, so that was probably the most
That's
consistent one that worked, because I just didn't want to let anybody down, and I loved everybody that I worked with. So it was just like my DSM was like a dad to me, and it like that's great, but it's now that I'm like in the real world, I'm like, oh, that might not be super appropriate. Like, not that he was ever inappropriate, just like, oh, that relationship is kind of weird for your job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Not have that relationship in your job.
So that is actually a super interesting topic, because there's people who have, I remember there was people who were dating someone outside of the book world that sold, and that person always had a really like you're meeting with your manager at 10 p.m. to talk about, you're like, oh, whatever, he's coming to your house. He's gonna like at 11 p.m. You're like, yeah, it's my internship. You know, it's like, that's weird.
Yeah,
Did you ever
I
have
mean,
that?
at least like my manager had some boundaries, so like we never were like ever hanging out. But it was more just like he was just such a good dude that like when my own dad was like not being a good dude, he would be the one that would be like, you know, you're gonna be fine. So
Yeah.
you know, blame it's like you PC at this job every week from the minute that you're hired into the program until you leave. Even if you're like a student manager, you don't PC as much, but if you need one, you ask for it. So like by the time that all this stuff went down, I just did what all book kids do and I asked for a PC, but we weren't talking about books. We were talking about like my personal life.
Yeah.
And so not good.
It's interesting. That's part of the culture that, and it's not a bad thing necessarily about the culture at Southwestern. It's like a tight knit group, which is I think what makes it hard to leave. Like, it's just the people. I always feared leaving because I thought I was gonna get shunned because those are the only friends I had, or at least the ones that I liked hanging out with the most of the time. And so I felt like if I left, I would lose all of them because we never talked to anybody that left after. Like it's like, oh, can't.
Well, and I can say that definitely kind of happened when I left, but like,
oh,
well, okay. So how many summers did I sell? I really don't know because I sold really well for a handful of them, and then I was super off schedule for a couple more, and then one summer I field managed for an entire summer, so I didn't sell at all. And then my last summer, I just hung out. I was just like hanging out for 4 weeks, unless I was working with a rookie, and then I quit midsummer, which is like the thing you do not do at this job. But like, we can talk about that too. It's kind of a fun story, but
let's dig into that.
Oh my gosh. So I think can I just like go broad scope on here, like
please.
Go ahead.
So I think when I started selling books, it was really fun because it was 2008. The internet wasn't very good for homework, and the whole package cost $2.99, and that's just a great round number. And I don't obviously like. It's a mental thing. Like you can wrap your head around $2.99. You can coach yourself and wrap your head around $5.99. And like, as long as you can make the mental connection, like you can sell it, that's fine. But when they kept going up in price and then the internet kept getting better and better, I'd been working for Family Heritage in their receptionist, like I was a receptionist in their office between some summers, and listening to like alumni talk about how much it had changed. Like they weren't meaning anything bad, but you just kind of pick up on some things. Like some of them were dads and were like, yeah, there's nothing in those books that I couldn't just get on a free app nowadays. And that was like the worst thing I could hear going into my last summer. And I remember I was in Crown Point, Indiana, and I was selling books in a town that had flooded. Like my turf had really bad rainstorms, and it just like was flooding over and over again. I don't think it's that unusual for Crown Point, but in my head when I was knocking on doors, I was like trying to sell people $600 worth of books, and they had like no yard because it was like completely washed into the lake.
Yeah.
And I remember I sold, I think I sold like 5 or 6 books to this family with like elementary school age kids and one middle schooler. And I left that house and I just felt like the most awful person on the planet. Cause like that was like $700 they could have spent on anything else.
Yeah.
And I was over it. I was like, I can't do this. Like this is just like so wrong. And like, again, it's not the book's fault. It was like my conviction. Mm-hmm. And I remember that's when like the crap really hit the fan, because that's when I started like calling around to like, I don't know if all off schedule people do this, but you just start calling around to people who will like talk it through with you. Yeah. And so I'm calling like friends. Okay, sure. So I'm like calling friends of mine that left. I'm calling friends of mine that left on good terms, left on bad terms. And then I'm calling like one of my old bosses at Family Heritage. I'm calling like my DSM. And I heard everything from like, you know, why don't you just become a field manager and stay out there for the rest of the summer? Why don't you just suck it up? One person said, if you don't finish this summer, you're going to end up drunk in a ditch, just like your father. And
jeez, and this is a person that wasn't selling books anymore.
Oh my
God.
Yes, and this was someone that I just loved, and I was like, really? Because like books, okay. So and then finally, like one of my really good book buddies who had been he was an alumni, he'd been out for years. He was just like, here's $300, drive home. Like, just take the money and go. And then I was just like, all right, I'm done. And then I had to have the worst phone call of my life with like one of my favorite people on the planet, which is Ryan Groom, and like tell him that I was leaving. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
And
shout out to Ryan.
So,
yeah, dang. So wait, so you were a manager. You weren't an OL or anything?
No, I wasn't an OL, but I don't know. I mean, I get where they're coming from. I'm not gonna say that like it was good. I shouldn't have been out there. I just shouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
But I went, and then I had to go, and then it was just awful. I mean, talk about just feeling like the worst emotional tug of wars.
Yeah.
Ever, because you feel so guilt-ridden. You don't want to hurt anybody, but like you can't do it. Like I could not do the job. I was a mess. So yeah, that was just.
It's interesting because a lot of people, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people that we've talked to so far have told us that like they stayed one summer too long. You know, they've all said that like I shouldn't have gone out that last one. I'm one of those. I'm like, why did someone take me out? Like, why did it, like if I was going through the interview process, you would have been like, this kid's not ready. And yeah, I went, and it was rough. So that must have been a tough drive on the way home, though.
I felt amazing. Here's the thing.
That's
I did. Here's the thing. What hurt was like 3 months later when everyone was done with the summer, and like I knew that my relationship with people that I like really cared about would never be the same. Like I missed that. Like every person that I've worked with selling books, I have loved, respected. I just think book people are the best. So that was the hardest part, was just like 3 months after being out of books, knowing everyone was done, and then just thinking about, oh, great, like I don't get to hear their stories this summer. I don't get to hear like what they did well and what they didn't do well. And that's like why you like being a manager, right? Like we stay not just to sell books, but because like of the friendships and stuff like that. So I think now, I mean, to go way back when you said like you were afraid of just like being shunned, I can't say that anyone like actually like reached out to me to be like, you are shunned, but I kind of self-shunned because I felt like that's all I deserved, because I did the taboo thing that you should never do, which is
guilt. Dang.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, okay, then what did you, there's so many questions we got here.
Sorry.
No, this is great. This is great. No, so one of the things happened to me when I left, and Nick, I don't know if this happened to you, but when I left, it like people that I used to get like Christmas cards and stuff from, nothing.
Gone.
Like it wasn't people whose weddings I went to.
I never got Christmas cards to begin with. So I'm just kidding. I still get Christmas cards.
No, yeah. I mean, I was in people's weddings that I didn't hear from. Again, I had even my relationship with my brother was strained for a while. So it's interesting. Would you have any of that? Like,
I can't say it was in weddings that like, and then it didn't work out. I think, I'm trying to think of like a good example. Not really. I think I was just more surprised that there were some people that I thought I had like more substantive relationships with that had nothing to do with Southwestern, that like just never like if I texted them, they'd answer back like once or twice, but it was pretty clear that they didn't want to keep talking to me, and I was like, oh, so that's what I am. But on the flip side of that, I had friends that like did not care one bit that I quit, and they were great book people too. So like I would definitely say there was more silence than like people that I was still close friends with, but like my super close friends, like I was actually in their weddings after I quit Midsummer. So
of course.
yes.
Yeah.
Primo.
So that's good. That means
And
that
then-
you definitely had something worth remembering and going back on. What I'm kind of curious about, because we don't just want to hop to the end and, you know, completely bypass 6.5 summers worth of stories here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, what were some of the things you were like most proud of from the book field, that you were the best at, things, you know, that you felt like only you were doing to have fun, right? I used to take selfies with owners' dogs, like homeowners' dogs. I'd be like, can I get like a selfie with your dog? And I'd take my tablet and just like have a bunch of dog pictures to look back at. That was a really awesome way to have fun. And that's how I helped a lot of first years kind of like get out of their head and just onto the doors. What were some things that you may have found along the way?
So I think, so first of all, my favorite thing about selling books, like that was especially my first few summers, like when you're naive and you're just like, I say on the Kool-Aid and it sounds like a bad thing, but sometimes it's not a bad thing. So what I loved was like being totally on board with everything that they're teaching you. And then you're executing it, and then you're actually meeting your goals and realizing that like the person that like you dream of being when you write down your goals is actually who you are. Like that is like the coolest feeling. Yeah. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is just like the greatest realization that I like don't have to picture myself in the future being who I want to be. I just am that person now. Thank you. It's great.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I think if there's anything about like what I did as a book girl that I'm just really proud of, I think it was before most doors, I would just be like talking to Mrs. Jones before she answered, and I'd just be like, we're gonna be such good friends. Like you're just gonna meet me and I'm just gonna meet you right where you're at. And like you don't have to be anything you don't want to be. You don't have to worry about stories or whatever, like, because we all kind of live these lives of like Nick and Andres, like you are not just who you are, but like if someone knew you in elementary school, you're also the person that they remember from elementary school and those stories and things like that. So I was always just like, Mrs. Jones, you're not those stories. You're just who you are, who you want to be. And I ended up just getting like
awesome.
A lot of like really great. I probably spent way too much time in houses.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That was probably the biggest reason why I didn't sell as much.
What's the longest you stayed in a house?
Oh man, she needed to cry. I just told her. So
this is
I
like
remember,
2, 3, 4 hours
where I'd walk up to a door and she'd answer just crying. I just put my arms out and we just hugged. She didn't know me. We just hugged. So I don't know what it is about how I sold books that made that happen so many times.
Oh man.
Well, Eliav Cohen says that he's proud to see the person you've become, Sydney. So
can I out Eliav and say that he's the one that gave me the $300?
Yeah, he did out himself in the comments. He was the one that gave you the out. So.
I just need to shout out that every year there were like 3 people that were like, don't do this again. Don't do it again.
Leave.
He was smarter than me. Yeah, I think there's an art to knowing when to leave. And
a little bit.
I did not learn the art.
So hang on. So then what was like, did you ever do anything fun with families when you were staying too long? Like I went horseback riding one time. I think Victoria told us she went and flew planes.
Oh yeah.
Someone.
Yeah.
So I didn't like go straight up golfing with the family, but we definitely like hit balls in their backyard for a while. That was like we were just making bets to see who could hit it better. Think of other good ones. Mostly it was just talking. I'm just a conversationalist. I like to talk to people. So
that's brilliant.
What are some of the turfs that you sold in? Like what's the most beautiful place you ever knocked in?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, man, that's hard. That's really
upstate
hard.
New York, Vermont. My gosh, being up in not the Rocky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains. They go all the way up to Maine. It's amazing up there.
Vermont.
Yeah, I would say
insane.
Buffalo probably had my favorite summer weather. Like
yes.
I like jacket
kind of temperate,
weather.
right?
Yeah, so it's like you have a jacket in the morning, even if it's July. I love that. And it's blue sky, puffy cotton ball clouds.
Yeah. You sold in upstate New York?
Yeah, I sold. So the year that I field managed, and then the year before that, I was in kind of the New York, Pennsylvania area.
Where?
So my favorite states to drive like around and through are probably Pennsylvania, Indiana, and New York.
I sold in
Keep
Wellsville
the license plate.
or in Hornell, the south of Rochester.
Okay, so I followed people in Rochester, but I wasn't there for more than like 3 days. But and then also with Syracuse and golly gee, somewhere in the middle of New York.
Like the Finger Lakes area. That's an interesting territory. That place is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I worked in this tiny town called Lewistown and the town of Niagara. So I had to cross the toll bridge every morning to go work by Niagara Falls. And it was like super cool, but like I would never make a rookie do that because you're like spending so much freaking money on toll roads. That was like the weirdest thing is toll roads.
Was there ever towns that you were like, I hate this place, I never want to come back here again?
Yes. I'm trying to think of like
which summer.
Yeah, Buffalo was great, but that was probably like my biggest like summer that I'm just like I hated that summer so much. Even though it was like beautiful, I had the coolest HQ. I roomed with Sydney Rivers, so Chrissy's little sister, and Hannah Ginter.
No way.
Hannah was a rookie and she was the best.
Nice.
And Sydney is like solid. She's so freaking awesome. And then we had a couple of weeks there with Christy with us too. And that was just like the most hilarious HQ. So I had everything I needed to do well, and I just hated my turf so much. So yeah, that's
interesting. Yeah, Buffalo area. What was the funniest or best thing they ever did in your schedule? Let's get into this off schedule.
Nothing cool. That's the thing.
What?
I never did it right.
She was a conversationalist. She was talking to trees and the woodland creatures.
I did nothing. I did absolutely nothing. I read a lot of books.
Oh wow.
I was so
when you could have been telling them,
like,
you're supposed to be reading them to the
books.
Yeah, right.
Wait, what books are you reading? Were you reading the Southwestern books?
I went to a carnival museum once and I didn't even want to go. My mom looked it up and she's like, go and take pictures because I want to paint the horses.
What?
So that's the only reason why.
A carnival museum?
Yeah, it was like the oldest museum that documents merry-go-rounds is somewhere in New York by Buffalo. And she was like, just go look.
Okay. The oldest museum that documents merry-go-rounds.
I don't know.
Niche.
Yes.
You didn't do anything fun on schedule? Like I went to the movies. It was so great.
No, and I hear people like going to concerts and stuff. I never, no.
Oh, that would have been cool.
I was lame. I was super lame. Yeah, I don't know. Man. I don't know
so
why
you just stayed with like moms?
To me that you could like leave your turf when you're on schedule.
Oh man,
it's go great. Places.
Yeah.
It's great. When I was off schedule my third summer, that was when I discovered what it was like to go to movies by yourself. It is a phenomenal experience, especially when you're off schedule because you're like, I shouldn't be here. You feel so bad. But
yeah.
Damn. So you never just like took off. But so you spent time with families just too long. That's the you're off schedule, is what you're saying. So then you just like camped out. Did they always buy, or was it just like, oh, it's just cool?
Well, here, this is what I'm curious about then, because if you were hanging out with people to the point of like moms crying with you, there's gotta be some like neighborhood gossip that's like, you don't have to name names. Nobody knows anybody here, right? You definitely have some juicy stories, don't you?
Did you guys ever sell in turf and then like I was an idiot. I thought I was like selling in these areas that people just didn't like to brush their teeth. And then I found out later that like if they have like stuff right here, it's because they all do meth.
Yeah.
Like,
meth addicts.
Everyone in my turf does meth. Like I didn't find that out until like way later.
My third summer, I knocked on a house and I got this weird smell. I don't know what meth smelled like, but I'm assuming it must have been meth because I knocked on this house and the lady opened the door and it just wafted. And I was like, oh, and then I did the approach and it just felt sketchy. Well, that was on a Friday. And then I went and did a bunch of gravy in another town. And so on Monday I was going to go back to break turf and I drove by and that house was burnt down. And so I I was like, what the hell? So I like pulled up to the house that was like a quarter mile down. And I'm like, what happened over there? And they're like, oh, they had a meth lab going and they caught on fire yesterday. And it just like and I was like, oh shit, I knocked on a house that was cooking meth.
Dang.
Sorry, I'm late for dinner. They were cooking. They're Heisenberging it up.
Did you guys ever get put in a sketchy turf or like no?
Yes.
No? Really?
Yeah, I mean, nothing super duper sketchy, and obviously I'm aware to like not go into that level of sketchy because it's just not a good use of time. But I was in St. Johnsville, New York, and I just remember it was just like 40 to 60%, something crazy, maybe even 70% of all people were like below the poverty line or on food stamps or just on some sort of government assistance. And I just remember going that direction, almost like tripping into that town and just like hating every second of it because, yeah, there was, areas near the police center or whatever where I would check in and get my license where I saw like needles on the ground. It's just like, what the heck?
Whoa,
I gotta get out of here. It was like a day or two there, and it was just not positive.
That's wild.
A kid shot me in the face with like a water balloon gun there. I was like, what the? Yeah.
No way. Damn. Now, what was a sketchy turf? Did you sell in a sketchy turf? Sid?
I didn't. I guess I did, but I didn't know, and like people were still buying, so I was like, I don't know what they're. I don't. But that was in New York. And
Upstate New York is poor.
A little bit.
Yeah, but I learned like a really cool lesson because my first summer I worked in like Big Brick the entire summer. I was in Saline, Michigan, which is right outside Ann Arbor. So like great place to sell. Like I had such a great summer, but you'd meet all these families and like they'd all traveled the world or they were professors at U of M. So they were just so cultured and like worldly and like that was like really cool. But then by the time I got to New York, I was like, I think that was summer number 5. Almost none of those kids went to college. Like almost none of them did. But their parents cared so much about their kids doing well.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was cool was that like I don't know if this is true or not, but it just seemed like most of the people I talked to, they never really left their county. Like they did not go travel and do like what we like as book kids, like that's kind of what we do. Like we put a lot of, and it's not bad, but we put a lot of emphasis on how important it is to see the world and do all these things and check off this list that we make of things we want to do before we die. And like, it was really like kind of a eye-opener for me that like you can be born, live and die in one county and never leave. But like if you have your family and you have like live an honest life, you can be so happy. And I think that like with Instagram and like Facebook and all these things where we're always like seeing what people are doing and how fancy schmancy, your car is and your camping trips or whatever, it's like you forget that like, this is the first time in like the history of the world that we've lived so lavishly, and like really the key to happiness isn't really wrapped up in that. That's just bonus. So I just love that I worked there because I really saw like happy families, and like they weren't affluent at all. So I needed that lesson, I think.
That's fair. That's very cool.
It's really interesting when you consider like how people become townies, right? They stay in one place forever and they know like that. Those are the people that the names on your names list actually work on, right? Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, my cousin's on here, my sister's on here. Oh, and her like girlfriend's on here. Vermont was cool. But when you think about it, there's like layers and layers of depth that get grown as a result. There's like, my family was part of the city council for the last 8 decades or some crazy thing, and there's gossip that comes from that. Like when I was working in Vermont, Andres was working with me out there that summer, and it was really fun just to have that experience of actually knowing a community, that you can't have that level of connection where the names work in that way, where it's, oh, that's my cousin, I went to school with that person, whatever, unless you stay there. And everybody isn't just like distracted by social media nowadays. They're also like, it's common for people to just leave a rural area or the same community that they grew up in and just go somewhere else. I'm here in Colorado. I feel guilty about it sometimes. I don't know the names of my neighbors, right? Not even a little bit. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Those type. Oh, go ahead.
We were lucky to come across like those nooks and crannies of America where that was the case, you know?
Yeah.
That's where a lot of cool shit happens.
Did you guys ever get like the person where it was like that one family in the summer, you're like, there's no way I could ever forget you. Not even because they were like necessarily that like they bought, but for me, every summer I had at least one or two people who just was like a blessing to meet them. It was like a weird vibe that kind of like set you straight for like the rest of that week. And they just like, I had a mom once say, hey, I don't want to buy anything, but I think it's cool that you're a college kid that's working his ass off to just, pay for, I mean, you could be doing drugs or something like you partying, but like what you're doing is great. And I believe in what you're doing. And I'm going to spread the word that you're doing it. Like they just pumped you up and you were like, okay. And some of them bought and they stuck with you. They fed you. They were like that family that like if you needed an emergency bathroom or something, you could just go back to. You know what I'm talking about? Like those cool families. Yeah. Did you guys have any of those? It was
okay.
a fun time.
So my favorite one is okay. I'm sure this happens to book guys too, but I just imagine with book girls, like you're with families a lot, and they're like more protective. They're like, I got a lot of phone numbers, like when I was selling books, because they're like, if anything happens, if you ever don't feel safe, like take this. And like,
not once.
No.
They're just like, get out here.
If you're a lady, listen, comment on this. This is curious.
I had this like really cool God moment. I think my fourth. It was in Indiana. I love Indiana. It's a great state. And this was a different summer than the one when I quit. And the turf that I was working in was where Jeff Gordon grew up. That's like the only claim to fame that it had. It's like,
what was the name?
So everything was like race car themed and whatever. And it was just a really funny turf. I had a lot of fun collecting things from that turf because it's all like NASCAR stuff all summer long. But I remember I was selling in this neighborhood with like cookie cutter houses. Everything looked exactly the same. I sat down with this family and the dad was like a big car dude. And he just, they bought, and at the end of the sit down, he was like, hey, like, make sure you note my number because if something happens with your car, just call me and we'll help you. And it like clockwork, like 1 week later, my car broke down. And I went back through my order book and I was like looking for this family. And I picked up the number, I called, the mom answered, and I was like, hey, my car broke down and I just didn't know who to call. And I just thought of you. And she goes, oh, perfect. My dad owns a car dealership. His name is Jim. Just go down there and tell him that I sent you. And I drove down to the dealership, and Jim called me on the phone before I met him. And we ended up having like a 20-minute conversation. And like, he wasn't asking about like cars or anything. He was asking me like what I looked for in a husband, and like not in a creepy way, but in like a grandpa way, because he was obviously like older, but he was just like, yeah, I just want like you have values. And I get there and he starts talking to me about his grandkids, and I started to connect that like I must have called the wrong number, because the kids that he was talking about were not the kids of the house that I went to call.
Oh.
And I went through my order book and realized that I had flipped the page one more and called this other random customer, and it was her dad that had the car dealership. And
Wow.
I ended up
That's
having
great.
car trouble all summer long, and I would just
Yeah.
call Jim, and like he would just like he sold me a car for like dirt cheap, and he
Nice.
would let
Those
me
are the best.
around for a week selling books for a week before I had to buy it. Like it was just awesome. So I just really think that was providential, that like it wasn't an accident that I flipped that page. And a lot of times after I'd finished work that summer, he'd take my car to go have it fixed, and they'd like feed me dinner and stuff like that. It was just awesome. And they were a great name. They were like a really good family in that community too. So it was kind of a bonus to have.
That is a good story. This is what this podcast is about. That is so cool. Did you okay, so you didn't do anything fun off schedule. Did you have any like fun stories from like get backs or sizzles like that you're like, oh my god, this one sizzler, crazy fun? Anything like that?
Sizzler stories.
That's either really good news or
No. So my favorite sizzler story actually isn't mine, it's my brother's. So my brother's 3.5 years older than me, but I was his student manager. And it made for a really interesting
dynamic. Yeah.
Yes. And if you met him, he's like the most amiable guy. Like he's like a golden retriever. Like if you met him, he's just like, you're the best ever. Oh, you're so cool. Like, and that's how he talks. It's just every person that he meets is the best. And he really is that way. Like he's not faking anything. He's just a very genuine hearted person. So so his first sizzler, my second, was in Costa Rica. And that was in Jaco Beach. And it was kind of a weird sizzler because it wasn't this all-inclusive resort. It was like, I think Jeffrey mentioned this. This was the Best Western. It was actually really cool. It was a sweet setup. But we were at a Best Western, and like everything was kind of like, you figure out what to do and you go do it. And I have to just say, before I get into my story, it was like the weirdest and almost scariest sizzler too, because the only club, I think there was one good club, and then the other club that we would go to was like on the second floor. It almost looked like it was like an old cafeteria, or like it could have been someone's apartment that they just cleaned out and turned into a club. And and the ceilings were super low. I remember more than one book guy I know on that thing got hit on by prostitutes, and one of them got maced by a prostitute. Another one had like a pimp come after him and getting mad at him for like trying to like negotiate a different rate.
Low expenses sizzler. They took the low expenses to heart.
Yes, but you could rent dirt bikes or mopeds. And I think it was like my brother, Justin Ellingson, Travis Mickelson, Cameron Johnson. So just Midwestern JYD people. They were like, Jeff, you should come do this. And he's like, oh, I've never ridden a motorbike. And they're like, oh, it's cool. We'll just put you on a moped and like, you'll be fine. And apparently he couldn't figure out the difference between the back brake and the front brake.
Oh no.
And we were going down hills the whole time, and he would only use the front brake. And he'd flip over the top. And I remember coming back from the beach, and we were walking through the hotel lobby, and one of our friends comes up and she's like, hey, I just saw your brother. I was like, cool. She's like, yeah, he was waving out of the back of a cop car. And apparently he had crashed his moped, and the cops picked him up, and they weren't like punishing him, but I don't know why. I think they were trying to take him to the hospital because he'd been cut up pretty badly. And they saw him like driving in the back seat of a cop car, like waving his shoe, and he had like bandages on his head or something, and he's just like waving out the window on his way to this Costa Rican hospital.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's Sizzler. That's a Sizzler.
That's Sizzler.
Oof.
Yes.
Wow. Did you okay, I gotta ask this. Nick, well, I don't know if Nick did or not. Do you guys ever like what are you guys' thoughts on like the inner relationships, like book relationships, on any of that stuff? Any interesting comments on that?
I found a fancy with a lady on my second Sizzler, and no, that was my first Sizzler. And she was in Florida, I was in Nebraska. So when we went back after Sizzler, it was kind of like, oh, we're just kind of talking from afar. Then she was in Colorado, and I went to Colorado for Frizzler a little bit early so I could spend New Year's Eve with her, and then it just didn't work out.
Mm,
And that's the only book relationship
bad.
I can speak to. So
I had to.
Yeah. So I've talked about this with Andres for a hot minute. I think that
which is why he's probably asking
if I
about
were
it,
to
huh?
do things
No,
differently,
I didn't think
I
about
wish
this.
someone
I
had
didn't.
just
I
been
didn't.
like,
This is not why
"Don't
I'm
date.
asking.
Don't date book people." Like I
Yes.
wish someone had just really strongly said, "Don't date book people," because I love book people. I'm like, we all know like book kids, attractive, very confident, lots of attitude. It's great. I think I don't know. I suppose yeah, you go to GRS, you hear like Life 101 by Dan Moore, and you start looking around the room. And it's like, oh, who wants to do Life 101? Like, yes.
It's like Tinder Live. It's like Tinder Live. You're like,
yeah, dating book people is really complicated because you're either long distance, or if you're not long distance, you're in the same org. And like I've only seen that go well a handful of times. You have to have so much discipline. So, and we're all like hormonal college kids.
that's bad, man. The book goggles are real at checkout. It's like, oh.
Yeah. I don't know. Just kind of on a more serious note, I don't know if it was like this my first couple of summers. I felt pretty protected when I was a first year and like a B manager, but like towards the end of my Southwestern career, I was getting a little concerned with just like how hard we were partying, and like no one makes good decisions when you're like that wild. And I remember getting really nervous, like now being like the old lady in the book group and like watching like these like really young girls at these parties, and like I didn't really see a lot of first year girls go for first year boys. Like they usually, if they're going to chase someone, they're usually going to chase after a manager. And like, I'm not saying the managers are bad guys. I don't think that at all, but it's just like a bad recipe. And that did kind of make me a little like I don't, incestuous is the wrong word, but it was just a gross feeling, like being in like this cesspool of like, wow, we're all really friendly with each other. And like the inner dating, it can get pretty intense.
Just ask Andres about his sister-in-law.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my brother and his wife worked out, like, and there's like the Bucks work, are married. There's like some really cool relationships that have come out of it.
Oh yeah,
for sure. But I mean, even me, like,
Brandon and Amanda.
Brandon and Amanda Hughes. But I'm not proud of like moments that I had that I'm like, oh, this is stupid. Like, why am I, making out with this person at Sizzler? Like, this is a bad, like, I mean, it's kind of like what Sizzler's hyped to be in a way. So it's weird because it's not encouraged, but it's also not like, or like, you know what I mean?
Everybody knows.
It's weird. It's like a weird, like, oh, whatever happens. And for a young 20, 21, 22-year-old, like, drunk kid who's got a ton of confidence, drunk girl who's got a ton of confidence, like, it is not a good recipe. Like, that part of the culture definitely involves like, or not, I don't want to say encourages, but there's definitely no like clear boundaries set hard for people, like, anywhere at that point. There was a point where I remember like Eagle Blitz people, not necessarily, and this isn't even like sexual stuff or like relationship stuff, but just like they partied hard. Like, I remember Eagle Blitz, people were doing like coke, like just hard drugs at like Sizzler or Get Backs, and I'm like, holy shit, like this is insane,
There were some force people doing that too, Andres, believe it or not.
I see, and I never
it's
like
just kind of like any group had that kind of person in it. I think it's sales and the like do-it-yourself attitude. It kind of attracts those kinds of people who are just like, whoa, do drugs and like punch cops in the face on Sizzler that are trying to arrest you. Jumped out a
Ooh,
window or
never-
something crazy.
I've
right?
never heard of that happening.
Really? Oh, we
There's
had
stuff.
give backs. We had
Never
give
heard of
backs. So
that.
we had a guy. It was in America, like not a sizzler. It was like we were at a give back. I don't want to say names, but after
Was
my
it fall ball?
yeah, it was fall ball, and we had a couple people go to jail, and
Yeah.
because they were on like yeah, they punched a cop. It was. I mean, and again, I don't judge those people because again, I mean, fucking we're 20-year-olds, and it's like not like, and it's like this whole idea of like we're badasses, we can do whatever we want. So it's like.
Crazy.
I mean, we all make our own decisions, though. We got to own up to them as well. But the point is, it was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's some of the most fun I ever had on GRSs were in New Orleans with Eagle Blitz people. Like, and I mean, and there was the partying, but it was like
those are crazy,
hilarious. And I never felt like anyone put me in a situation where I was super uncomfortable.
right?
So yeah, but I mean the first time I ever saw like drugs, like real drugs, was at a Southwestern thing with I was probably like a junior. I just grew up without being interested in drugs. So I just never I was like, oh, we're in a hotel room at a GRS. And I'm like, oh, things.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's where
Crazy.
they did the other like lessons. Like they have the lessons on how to recruit and train, and then they're just like lessons on all the different drugs you can take.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I guess I wasn't part of that group.
Or I just remembered like being at a Sizzler and like bumping into like somebody in our group and being like, "Are you okay?" And they're just obviously just coked out or something like that. You're just like,
Oh, no.
"Bro, what the heck?" I mean, you're doing this in a foreign country that we have no really like control knowledge about, no real contact. Like if you're doing this in your hometown or something, whatever, you know that corner.
If like people, if they weren't book kids, if they would even do that kind of stuff sometimes. Like some people would, obviously,
Yeah.
but like
Oh.
and this kind of goes back to the dating thing of dating book people, is that like I know personally, like I was always more willing to give like a book guy, or if we were like partying and someone was like, do something, like I actually don't think I ever did, but like if I would have, it's like I would have felt a lot safer doing it with book people, because these are like my friends that have been through this crazy thing with me. Like they would never let me down. And like that's why, like if you're at Sizzler or GRS or something and you meet like a book guy, or in your case a book girl that's like cute and they're really nice, like you would let them in a lot more quickly, because you would be inclined to trust them. So it's like, oh yeah, like I'm sure you're a great person already. Like I'm not gonna like take 8 months to get to know you like I would most people, like because you're a book person. I'm just gonna give you the benefit of the doubt that like your intentions are great, because you do this internship where you sell books.
Plus you're at Sizzler, so it must mean you're worth the shit, because apparently you equal your units or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Did you guys ever experience that, where someone like found out how much you sold and they treated you differently?
Yes. A lot.
Tell me. A lot?
Not really.
So I had a decent first summer, and so I'm not gonna claim like, oh, I'm such a badass. Like no, I had a pretty good first summer. I hit PC up a couple of times. I was on a pace setter a couple of times, and so that was a problem, because back then I was extra cocky. So after that summer, you know when you
right now he's only a little cocky.
He's a little cocky. Yeah, I'm a little cocky, not a little dicky. No, but when you're, so after you have a good first year, then like, and you're like the number one person from that school, or even like if you were like, I was in the top 10. So like when we were doing infos, you're the person that top first year from the year before is like who they just talk about the whole time, because they were like, so for example, that summer it was me and Hannah Reesberg in Nebraska, who had like, she sold like 6,000 some odd, 6,000. And I've sold like 4,200 units or something. And so we made 20 grand and 30 grand. And so whenever Yvette was doing like an info, she would say, oh, one of the things that Andres did really well, one of the things that Hannah did really well, blah, 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 right? And so you're sitting there, I was 19. I just made 20 grand. Like I was on the pace setter. So when I was back at checkout, people are like, oh, you're Andres. I was trying to catch up to you. People who you looked up to, like I remember back at the time, like Chris Salata or Sal Salata, he was like knocking 10,000 units a summer. And he came up to me at checkout and said, hey man, I saw you. Good job this summer. Like it's so hard to not feel like you're on top of the world. all you did was make 20 grand selling books in a college internship, but you're in that state. And then on top of that, you're getting recognized for everything. You get a big check, you get to sit down with Dan Moore. Like that summer we all got to meet Rachel Cruz, the top 10 people. Like I'm thinking I'm so badass, right? I won all the trips back home, but we're back at the place on campus. And then my DSM is like bragging about me to these peasants of rookies or soon to be rookies. Like so I was feeling like, oh, Southwestern is amazing. And then
it all changed.
Yeah. And then my third summer, I sold like 1,000 units. It was way off schedule. And
damn, bro.
Nothing. Even to this day, there's people who I'm like, really, dude? Because I don't know, because I was off schedule 5 years ago in college. Like, there's people who still like, it's interesting. It's interesting to see the difference in the way people treat you based on like how much books that you sold. It was weird. It was weird. Yeah. Did you experience that?
Have you tried to explain what being off schedule is to people who didn't sell books?
Oh, yeah. It's when you, well, no, it's easier to just explain what on schedule is. So on schedule is, on schedule is you're at a house or you're directly on your way to the next house. And if you're not doing that, you're off schedule. So it could range from like, I'm just sitting in my car taking a nap to I went to the movies or the beach or whatever. Or like you, I'm staying at this mom's house for 4 hours when I totally should have left.
Just holding her while she cried. No.
Totally. Yeah. And so that's off schedule for any rook, any noob, any non-Southwestern person. But yeah, it was an interesting thing to see that happen when people treated you different. Sorry, just to answer your question.
I think that I mean you've got a very interesting story of almost like a fall from grace, Andres. And I also have an interesting fall from grace. I mean, you left on weird terms, Sydney. I got fired, right? I told you that story. I feel like I need to save that story. That's got to be once people like the fan base is asking for it.
This is like
this is a dark. This is.
Oh, I've heard this story. I can hear this story again.
No, I'm good for now. Once the audience actually asks for it, then I'll like the next episode. I'll like make it a special moment or something like that. But I got fired by Dan Moore, right? I left on weird terms where people thought that I quit and they accused me of being a quitter, and that is something that you experienced probably a little bit, Sydney, and so you know how that can go. But I was kind of like in control of the PR of like how people heard about my story and how they heard about how I left. And in a lot of ways, like I was met with a lot of empathy and a lot of like just reaching out, making sure I'm doing okay, that kind of stuff. And I've remained in really good graces with so many people from the book field. I lived with people who sold this summer up in the north side of Denver here. And, I'm just thankful that I can stay plugged in, because my experience with book people has always been, they'll look you dead in the eye, and unless you do anything to them personally, they might not like give you all the time of day and give you this attention that you were getting when you were super successful, Andres, right? I just felt like they would always at least like listen, good listeners and people that I could confide in and not feel judged more often than not. And so that's personally what I'm grateful for, because it was their example that helped me carry that into every other part of my life.
Right.
It's easier to remember that harsher stuff because I suppose you had the contrasting examples, but that's been the opposite for me.
It's just super interesting, because when you talk to other people who sold books in the past, especially people who sold like in the early 2000s or like even in the 90s that aren't
right.
Like you just run into them or somebody they know, other older book people that you knew, none of them care about that shit at all. Like nobody cares about if you quit in the middle of your seventh summer or if you were way off schedule. Like they don't give a shit. I was with Will Metcher. You guys remember Will Metcher? Shout out to Will. And
Will.
yeah, I was in Portland, and I ran into some old bookers that he knew from Portland, and we were just having a beer, and it was such a fun. Actually, that's a really funny story, anyway. But yeah, like they never asked, oh, would you do, like, how were you off schedule, or like if I told them I was off schedule, they were like, oh yeah, okay. Like, it's funny that those people don't care, but the people that are still in Southwestern, like, there's people who like right now that I know that are selling books, that if I told them that, I know someone that like quit their 7th summer, they would judge you like hard, like still.
Almost made it to a decade.
It's interesting because that's not how I view the people that I'm close to in Southwestern still to this day. They're just kind of like whatever at this point, because they're so loyal to the brand itself that they're just like, oh, you sold a book, you picked up a bag, I like you, I can share stories with you. I think, Andres, when I was knocking on doors with you there in Vermont that 4th summer of ours, you talked about how when people quit early on in that summer, in like the first 3 weeks, you made this big deal in front of everybody. You're just like, I would trust Nick with my kids, Danny, and you were naming off all the managers because you knew that they were good for their word in the way that you were supposed to deliver that message at that time, right? Because we were all 3 of us preaching commitment to people at some point, right? And so you like made it like they're not bad people, they're still humans, right? They just couldn't handle this internship. It's just a thing, and I don't know of a single current book person that views it as anything more than that. I don't know. That's
interesting.
It's easy to blow it up more than that because, we're all like wired to view each other with this hierarchical, judgmental eye, right? With labels and stuff like that. But I really don't, I don't think that when people give you a cold shoulder, it's anything substantial in the first place.
I think it's self-protective. Like if you're going to compare people who are still in books to those who are out, it's like, of course they're not gonna just condone leaving the book field because they need to protect what they're preaching to their first years, and you don't want first years to quit. Like, that's not a good experience. You want them to finish and to like feel the greatness of driving in and out of checkout. Like, that's awesome. And same with like yourself. Like, I think the managers that stick around for a long time and still do really well know how to like protect themselves, like protect their minds, because I know for me, like, I didn't know what off schedule was until I was at a Southwestern meeting off the book field and someone started telling me about it. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was like a thing you could do.
Right.
And so, I was arrogantly on schedule my first 2 summers because I was ignorant. Right. And then my 3rd summer, I don't remember what happened, but I remember hearing like, oh yeah, like so-and-so would like do this while they were selling books. And then I was like, oh, well, if so-and-so can do it, then like I could probably get away with doing that once,
Right.
and like that,
and
if you're
Mr. Mediocrity.
I totally get the if you're still in books and you like don't want to have anything to do with people that would be off schedule or doing things that wouldn't help your business, because you need to like protect your mind and protect like your organization, and that's how you make your money. I mean, goodness gracious, like your whole living is dependent on like this thing. So I get that. I don't begrudge anybody that part at all.
Right. It's interesting that they have that mentality, though, is all I'm saying. But
yeah, no, and I mean I was treated, I don't know, I mean, I think the coolest thing is like when you get out of Southwestern, or even when you are still in it but you start to experience alumni, like you guys are right, they don't ask about your units, they don't ask about anything like that.
Yes, like, where did you sell? Who did you sell with? Right.
Yeah. And they're also like so generous. Like, I can't believe what some alumni have like given me of their time or resources or whatever. Like, I am just like so freaking floored by like how good alumni are. Like,
this is really awesome. Interesting.
And and they don't, I mean, I had a guy who he was a JYD guy that did like kick-ass book, man. I think he was a DSM at one point, I don't remember, but like he would meet with me anytime I'd ask, and he would just like talk to me how to like, because I felt like I wasn't getting coaching after a certain number of years, and I really wanted to feel
It
like a
feels
first
like
year
that
again.
sometimes.
And he
Yeah.
just did that, and like he didn't have to do that. Like he gave me hours of his time, and like and like Travis, well, I tried family heritage for like 3 months, and it was just too much like books. Like I just couldn't do it. It was
Yeah.
awful. But like the people in there that were just like so good, they're just so wonderful. No wonder like you want to stay with companies like that, because like once you're out of like books and you're like experiencing just like post schedule world, it's so great to just be with like the attitudes that surround book people.
What I feel like you're describing is like a higher level of respect that than what most people give or get in life. The last few weeks have been really frustrating at my call center job right now, because one of the office managers, who's a managing partner, he's like the director of recruiting and all this stuff. I'm like building out their process for recruiting, actually doing the interviews and all these things, right? There's just kind of like a conflict of roles, it seems like. And ever since I started doing more and more things, he was finding ways to poke holes in it. And it just felt like the ultimate disrespect, right? And it was just so frustrating, because he was doubting the fact that I would, train somebody on their schedule. Like it's demeaning to do that, right? And I'm just like, no, get out of here. And so it actually forced me to look up the definition of respect, because I honestly never really learned it. And it's a feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. And so what you were describing, Sydney, was this immense admiration for just you as a person, and how you have these goals and these things that you're working for. And that's the beautiful part about this arena called Southwestern, is there's just a high level of respect shared between everybody, because it's a cult and we all do the same crazy damn thing, right? So I don't know. It is hard to leave that work environment, because that level of respect feels like it should be given in every way, shape, or form. But when you go out into the real world, it's rare, that level of admiration for your character, your skills, your achievements, right?
But interestingly enough, I think you don't have to agree with me on this, but I think like Southwestern is like a really good internship for college kids, because it teaches you like not just how to do the sales stuff and all that, but also like you can get recognition for that kind of thing, and like I don't know how to do like the kind of more corporate, like, now you connect with people and you learn from people, and now you get to teach people how to do this job and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's funny because like, now that I think about it, like, I think that kind of brought out some like the best things in me, but also brought out some of the worst, because I had to have like a hardcore come to Jesus about how arrogant I was, and how much I like craved recognition.
Ego strokes.
And like, oh my gosh. And I wasn't like that before I sold books. Like I really wasn't. But like, once you start getting like what you were saying, Andres, like,
yes, tell me
your
more.
first summer, you're doing these things and people know your name and you don't know who they are. And you're like, oh, like, I did something right. Like, or picking up what I'm putting down. And I was that way. My first 2 summers were like really good. And like, I remember, I have to tell this story because I was just a fool, and I don't know. But like, I remember I thought I was just like hot shit. I thought like I was the coolest. And I remember going to sales school into my 3rd summer, and I'd recruited like 7, and they were all studs. Like I was like, oh yeah, like I would show every one of these kids to Dan Moore, and they would just be so sharp and so great. And I had sold a bunch the summer before, and like Tim, my DSM, like took me around to like meet all the other DSMs and was like doing what they do. And he's like building me up to like all these people, like, oh, this is Sydney, you're going to know her name. She's going to do these things. So then I sit down at sales school, and there's this kid sitting next to me, and I don't know if he actually knew who I was, but he was like asking me questions that made me like, in my arrogance, think that, oh yeah, like this is just another person. Like I don't know. It's, what I mean is that sometimes like when you do well at Southwestern, people kind of approach you and they have this weird look in their eye, like they expect something from you. And I don't know what it is, if they're just like, wow, you do something that I haven't done yet and I want to learn, and that's cool. But sometimes it's something else and I can't put my finger on it, but they just kind of look at you like they want something. And you're like, I don't know.
They look like kids looking up to a parent.
Yeah, I guess, but I didn't handle that well. I wasn't mature enough to like know what that look was. And I misperceived it on this guy. He was like, oh, cool. What summer? Cool. How'd you do last summer? And I'm like telling him, and I'm just like kind of being a dick. I was just being so rude. And then I think that guy ended up being Chris Salata. So and I was like, oh, and he got called up onto the stage like right after we had that conversation. And I was like, oh, I suck. Like,
I suck.
So I had let the Southwestern success just like go right to my head. And thank God that happened. But I think that summer that like burst the bubble in my head because I was just like so full of myself and I needed to like, you know, pride goeth before a fall. I just needed to have a big old tumble because I was so arrogant. I was so
Speaking of tumbles, what would you say, like, whether it was on doors or on recruiting and like having people quit, like let's talk about something that like actually humbled you to the point where you wanted to give up, but either you already told of how you did go home and that whole experience, but what are some things that you're proud that you were able to push through it regardless of, you know, that feeling of hopelessness?
I had a summer in Indiana where this was not my last summer. This was like one of my good summers, where a first year who was very sweet. She just wasn't very, she wasn't very good at communicating with people. She was doing some things in her turf, which was right next to mine, that got really misperceived by the community. And they thought the whole pedophile word started getting waved around, and that moved into my turf. And I've never had bad PR in my life. Like I have never had like rough, whatever, sorting that out. And I remember that summer, I got so many doors slammed in my face, like, and people just screaming. I remember one time there was a small herd of children like running after my car, being like, "Go away! You're a pedophile!"
Wow. Where was this at?
And
Indiana.
I would just like, I just had to focus on finding the only families in the neighborhoods that didn't have Facebook, essentially, which means I sold to a lot of homeschool families and religious people.
That's how you get over it.
But I didn't quit. Like that didn't stop me from working that summer. And I think like that was like a huge growth thing for me, because it was just like sometimes your job really sucks and you just got to do it anyway. And obviously, like, I don't know, it's weird. It's not a perfect analogy because I didn't carry that attitude throughout selling books. But I definitely, that summer, like I felt really good when I finished that summer. And it was just like, yeah, I've never had to deal with people just calling you things that weren't even true. And I got really good at having like, I remember there was this book, Fierce Conversations. I don't even remember, Susan, someone is the one who wrote it, but it was like, I got really good at like just learning how to have real conversations with moms when they would confront me about being a pedophile. It sounds so gross. But I would just like, I had to stop it from getting worse. So I had to learn how to like talk to Mrs. Jones at her door
in front
and be
of
like,
it. Yeah.
call the police right now. We can like have this conversation. Like I have a permit. I have every reason to be here. Nothing of this is based in truth. And like, I was surprised at how many people actually ended up coming around and then ended up like defending me after like we would be able to have that conversation. So that was like, I felt like I was learning how to be a lawyer, because I was just learning how to have like really logical but like straightforward arguments with people, and just not be afraid to be like, yeah, call the cops, because like they're gonna stand on my side. You know. And
Brandon Q had the same thing, except he didn't realize that the first year that was with him in the next town over got told that he was gonna get arrested if he saw him again. And so when Brandon said that to one of his clients, that's how he got arrested. He was because there was a client. Long story short, his rookie had some PR issues, and it was kind of the same thing as you. And so then Brandon was like, "Call the police." And so the person did. And since he had the other kid following him, then they threw them both in jail. So he did not read Fierce Conversations by Susan
No,
Scott.
well, okay, so I should preface that like one of my talents is like when I was selling books was I was really, really good. And I like, I hope this doesn't sound like being braggy, but like I always went into the police station like they tell us to do, but for whatever reason, like I really made friends with the police chief and like at least 2 officers almost every single summer. And like that came through so well for me that summer, because there were a couple of times where people called the cops on me, and I would run into the cop like a week later and he'd be like, "Hey, you know, people were I just want you to know that people were thinking that this was you, and I told them that it's not you. Just be careful, because like I'm really glad they called me first to ask questions, because I just would hate for someone to like not ask questions and do something stupid."
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I love police officers. They're awesome, because every summer like they have come through for me so well.
Clutch.
And it just, yeah.
I've had good and bad run-ins with cops when I was selling books, and smaller town cops seem to be a little bit nicer than like a little bit more metro areas. But yeah,
I have a fun story.
let's hear it.
All right, so I'm gonna share my screen for this one and actually show you where this happened. So this is Mayfield, New York. Beautiful, beautiful country. It's at the base of the Adirondack Mountains.
Good territory.
Oh yeah. So let's zoom out and then zoom right back in, right? So
I see all the ponies.
all right. As y'all can see, this is Vermont up here, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New York, right? Got the Finger Lakes over there, Lake Ontario. I was right at the base of the Adirondack Mountains, which is this large wooded area, and I was selling in Mayfield, New York. And so it was a Saturday. I'm not sure if you remember Johnny Romero. Andres,
Jamero, baby.
Yeah, so this dude was following me, and so I like before I even picked him up to have him follow me that day. I first door the dad of the house comes out and he's like, "What are you doing, man?" Like he's really grilling me. Turns out everyone on Facebook's thinking I'm casing houses to break in later, right? And so I'm like, gosh, dang, this is not going to be good for Johnny to see. So I need to go to the sheriff real quick. You know, they've got the police and then they've got the county sheriff that I instead went to and got everything sorted out just to be like, hey, let people know I'm cool. And so I just go and pick Johnny up. I go sell a 4-set word for word. He's like, what the hell? This is crazy. And I'm like, it works, bro. Come on. And so we're driving around this corner right here, and there's this empty lot right here. And so I'm going slow and like driving into driveways and then, just slowly going through the neighborhood, right? And I'm like pulling over right here because they're like in this area. There's a bunch of people just like in this, there's no home right there, but they were just like having a fire pit on a Saturday morning, smoking and drinking. And they're like, there's the guy who's casing houses. And I'm like, oh, all right, we're pulling over right now. So it's me and Johnny, who's wearing a Nebraska hoodie, which
and he's brown.
Yeah. So anyway, I get out of the car and they're just like, he's the guy who's casing houses. I'm like, come here, tell it to my face. What are people saying about me? And so they're just like, well, you're like casing houses, man. I'm just like, why would I be talking to you right now about this? I like, look at the thing on my door. I'm selling kids books door to door. Here, let me show you. And they're just like, oh, wow. Okay. All right. And I win them over. And like one of them has a kid that's, she's not really capable of buying anything. And I almost sell her, but I count it as a demo. I count it as a sit down because I really got to know these people and gave a buying atmosphere and everything. Yeah. And so they then take a picture, because I'm like, you guys need to help me out, right? You can't let all this, story about how I'm casing houses be the case, right? That's not who I am. And they take a selfie with me, they share it on Facebook, and that whole rest of the summer, it sucked because I couldn't use that. I guess you haven't heard about me yet. When people rejected me, like everybody heard about me, but nobody was upset. They were just like, I'm not interested. Get off my property, right?
Yeah.
But I loved that day because working with Johnny, pointing to his Nebraska hoodie to prove that we were from Nebraska. That was fun.
Mayfield, New York. What a place.
Pretty town.
I'm amazed at how when people like think they're reporting on you, how many details they get wrong. Like it was like one day they were looking for, I drove a black Suzuki with South Dakota plates, and they were looking for like a white Toyota Corolla with Michigan plates, and it was some girl walking around saying she was from Michigan. And I mean, I always was surprised because like throughout that whole summer, like they never got it right.
Yeah. Maybe there was a girl out there and it wasn't you. It was like some other girl.
No, it
taking
was
children.
It was easy.
It's interesting because Southwestern, despite its many imperfections, because it's like any other companies, like, would you guys ever be upset with the person that recruited you? We're not mad at that person. You know what I'm saying? I'm so thankful for that person. And even people who didn't like Southwestern, even people who left Southwestern in a bad way, like they're so glad I feel like even if they don't want to admit it, I feel like everyone deep down goes, man, I'm glad I did that. Good or bad, how it ended, And it's interesting because the reason I thought of this is because Johnny. Like I forgot Johnny sold books. Johnny's a good pal of mine. He got recruited by my brother, but I'm thinking like his life just changed. And this kind of goes back to the thing we were talking about, like people who like you still talk to alumni who like praise you and stuff, like give you that kind of respect. I think it's because after you sell books and you go through some shit like that, and then you meet some people who are like, I mean, there's so many amazing human beings that are in Southwestern, like at Feed Doe. I mean, the guy's a great human being. It's like I love him. I just talked to him the other day. He's gonna be on the podcast hopefully. And you meet people like that, and then you go to like the real world and you meet Susan from like sales. And you know what I'm saying?
And she complains a lot.
And there's nothing wrong with that person. That person's a very nice person. Like there's a person who I work with. She's great. I'm sure she's a good human being. She's a good mom, whatever. But they're just like neg all the time. Or they have a shitty attitude, not even like a positive attitude or a negative, just like a shitty attitude. Or they're the things that are problems that like in the book field you don't even think about. It's a big deal to them. Like if you had car issues, it's like, oh my God, I got a flat tire. My day's over. Like, dude, just change the tire. Go on. It's just a tire, Check-in gin lines are a suggestion to book guys or to book people in general. As you go on and you meet someone who sells books that you don't know, there's like this automatic level of respect because you're like, I know you're at least capable of, like, you've at least experienced something in life that if you got a flat tire, it wouldn't be the end of your day. Or like
you sat on a curb and cried.
Oh yeah.
Right?
You met a hot mom or dad, like or you had a moment where
you like struggled to give your sales talk because you were nervous about that.
Yeah, we all had our first store. That's like a thing that makes us all the same kind of people in Southwestern. Is no matter how good you were, how many units you ended up selling, we all remember that first store and you're like, holy shit, what a crazy day. I remember my first store, or your first customer, realizing it works. Like I remember that it was my first day, first customer, and it was some lady, I won't do names, but it was at a farm. They had a dairy farm, and I just did the approach. It was like I had done like 7 approaches at that point, and so I was like, okay, now I know, I got it down now. And so, and I nailed the approach, and then I said the intro, and she said the things that we practiced at sales school, and I was like, oh my God, this is going well. And so then I went through the whole thing, and no objections, just straight up how they told you it would happen. And she's like, yeah, I'll take a set. And you're like, oh my God, like that crazy feeling, it fucking works. Like just a weird moment. We all remember that, you know what I'm saying? And it's such a funny thing to say because we don't remember like the people or maybe the town we were in or what they thought, but that feeling of self-belief that you get from getting a customer, it has nothing to do with the books. It has nothing to do with the sales talk. It's just you said you were going to do something and you did it, and there was like that feeling of like, oh my God, I just did that. I didn't know this person 20 minutes ago, and they just gave me $500. And if I can do that, I can do anything. That's a cool feeling too. And nobody talks about that. I feel like and now in Southwestern to rejoice and come together and something like that. You know, I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think it's cool. It's cool that you guys do this because I've been like thinking this week that just about like books, like more than I've thought about Southwestern in like a really long time. And I do remember, like, I miss like, I guess what we don't talk about is the exhilaration of being a rookie and like those landmarks, you know, the first time, like I was so scared to work till 9:30. And like the first time I got out of a house at 10 p.m. I was so freaking happy and just like Rocky. Like I was just like freaking out. And same with like, yeah, the first time you sell the entire kid set together. Or like,
instead of just the little books. Yeah.
I know. And I was like notorious. Like I would get so much crap from my managers. They were just like, Sydney, just it's a package. It goes together. I was like, I know, but everyone wants the movie.
I know.
I was just one week I think I had 55 customers for like 320 units. Like I sold like only moo-boos. Like
Wow.
that's it. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. But yeah, so it's just fun to like remember being like young and dumb as a rookie and just like you're just doing what you're supposed to do. And yeah. And then it's just so great. I just love stories like that.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Andres.
Yeah. So
Shout
okay, so
out.
then question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to shout out to my fourth summer roommate, Colin, for listening in. I've got plenty of stories. Oh yeah. Plenty of stories of like his first summer. He actually had to move halfway through that first summer because he was struggling and needed a change up. And so he moved in with me. And the very first day that we knocked on doors together was July 4th. That was a Monday. And so like we're like going through my turf, and at around this time, and I think I've talked about it on another episode, there was this thing called the Rainbow Festival, which is the largest hippie festival on earth. It's like 10,000 hippies in a forest on a mountain in Vermont. Just being dirty, gross, and getting high and loving on each other and not showering, right? And then they'd like go into my turf and like cause trouble and like poke meat containers at grocery stores so that they would get thrown out, and then they'd go dumpster diving afterwards and crazy stuff like that, right? So they were terrorizing my town, and so Colin's just following me and we're just like struggling, like we're getting some really serious like people walking up like we're ex-cops and we patrol these areas like super diligently and we don't trust you. And I'm just like, so inspect, you know, standing my ground like you were talking, Sydney. And it's just like the stories that you can share with people during a follow, right? So shout out Colin. That's the first story of him working with me. The first of many.
Also, Sydney, we got some shout outs to you. Connor Miles says Sydney Mead, what a crusher. Connor, shout out to Connor if you're still watching. Comment and if you have any questions for Sydney, by the way, if you're listening, if you have questions for Sydney or for any of us. And then Conrad Alagaban.
Yeah.
Alagaban? I don't know how to say that. Sydney Mead sending love from Oklahoma. So you got fans everywhere, girl.
Dude, book people, I love them.
Yeah,
so
book
very
people.
much.
So hang on. So did we ever wrap around back to the story about why you left, or that story of what happened there, or is there more details in that we?
Oh, I suppose where I was going with that was just like
there's drama here.
Hold on. Do we need a bathroom break or anything? Anybody need
a? Oh, I'm good.
Okay. I'm gonna take a sip of water. I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick and.
Okay. Stay hydrated.
Okay. Also, let's show off our Christmas sweaters real quick. We haven't acknowledged that.
I think yours are better than mine. I had to borrow.
Thunder Mifflin Paper Company. Bah humbug.
Pug.
Bah humpug.
Humpug. Oh my.
Check out the
Santa on a T-Rex.
I like the Santa on the T-Rex.
I love it.
I actually got this from a guy at a bar who was drunk, went to high school with, and he's like, "You want this Christmas sweater?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have a party. I have to go to it later." And he's like, "You give it to me, never ask for it back." So
win.
Mendoza. Yeah, for sure. But okay, you guys keep chatting then and keep talking about like
take your sip of water.
Get some water and maybe like a pour of whiskey or something.
Okay. I got
all right,
one.
So Go ahead.
Oh no, you go. You go.
I was gonna say, what crap are we gonna talk about Andres now, right?
Oh shoot. Unfortunately, I have no crap.
No, I'm
I
just
have
kidding.
none.
What were you gonna say? What were you gonna bring up?
Oh, I was gonna say weird church stories that actually connect to your hometown. Did you ever meet anybody selling books that was connected with your hometown?
I came across like one or two people who went to my college, but they weren't very excited that I was talking to them.
Really?
They're more of the closed-minded, because Creighton University right here is a super prestigious school that's really
It's prestigious.
expensive.
It's fancy.
Yeah, so it's
Nebraska.
the people who are a little more like, oh, cool, Creighton, no, I'm not interested. I don't care. Get out, bye. So
Yeah.
nothing more than that. Oh, well, actually,
Yes.
you know what? I've got two, not to my hometown, but my home state. So
Okay.
my first summer,
Me too as well.
no, it was my fourth summer. Wow, that's a real weird line to cross there. But my fourth summer in Vermont, I came across this guy who I was just like, yeah, I'm a college student from Nebraska. And he's just like, no way. Oh my gosh, let me tell you about Nebraska. I went to school there. And he like is from Vermont, but like loved
Let me just.
Nebraska football and went to school in Nebraska as a result. Yeah. We got the dub. That's good.
Sorry,
momentum
I'm
for
just.
next
I
year.
love Nebraska stories.
Oh, me too. Oh yeah. Go Big Red. So this guy is just like thinking that I went to school at Nebraska, and I didn't have the heart after he's like telling me like, now like when you were on the campus, because I had recruited on campus in Nebraska by that point. So I knew I could like pretend like I was an alumni. I didn't have the heart to tell him I went to Creighton instead.
No.
Oh, but he bought for his granddaughter actually some kids books. And then my third summer following Danny, Andres's younger brother, we came across this dude who actually knew my grandma because they went to school together, and he had a teenage daughter that Danny was trying to sell him books for. And so I was like, you're from Hebron, Nebraska? He was like, you're from Nebraska? I'm from Hebron. He was trying to shoo us off and like not be interested at all, but then he got interested, and Danny was able to give him a good run through. But the funniest thing was he's from my grandma's hometown, and he knew my grandma. R.I.P. Pat. Anyway.
R.I.P. Pat.
Andres, what's yours? That's awesome. That's a cool story.
One was my third summer, one my first summer. I think I already told one of these stories.
Yeah, you told the one about the Grand Island bar. Tell the other one.
Yeah, but that one's worth telling again. That's so good. Anyway,
sure.
My first summer knock-in, week 2, Wednesday, 8:30 in the morning, first house, a town called Whitesville, New York. Look at my face, like my skin color. I was selling in Whitesville, New York.
Colin sold in Whitehall.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not a white. Anyway, so I knock on this door. Lady opens the door. She's kind of confused, and I'm like, "Hi." The person here, say, "Hi, my name is Andres. I'm a college student from Nebraska." And she's like, "Nebraska? I used to live in Nebraska." I said, "Oh, great. Where?" And she goes, "Grand Island." I said, "Oh, that's my hometown." And she goes, "Yeah." But she's kind of testing because she's kind of sketched out. And so she's like, "Yeah, I worked at the hospital there." I was like, "Oh," and I could feel like she was kind of sketched. I was like, "St. Francis Medical Center." And she's like, "Yeah." So she put up her eyes. And so I was like, wait. When was this? She was like, 6 years ago. And I said, "What did you do? You a doctor or something?" She goes, No. I just worked the front desk, receptionist kind of thing. Checking in patients and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, wait. 6 years ago?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Did you ever know any of the interpreters that were there?" And she goes, "Yeah, there was 2 of them. One was an older man. He was from Mexico. And then there was this like I'll never forget her. Her name is Sandy. She was the craziest, like funniest, like Colombian lady I have ever known." And I said,
"That's my mom.
Sandra's my mom." And she goes, "No way." Yeah. She remembered my mom. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. She bought some Askins. Right. And then they bought. And then they bought. The other one I got to tell you, it was pretty good. So in Grand Island, there is a bar called Balls, BALZ. It's a sports bar, kind of like cool dive place. Great wings. And the slogan is, "Who needs Hooters when you got balls?" They're like tagline. which is pretty funny. And so, yeah, and so third summer, I'm in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, and I'm Wednesday afternoon, like 2 or noon or something. I'm driving down, big old double wide and knock, and this lady comes out and she's wearing a shirt that says "Balls, Grand Island, Nebraska," and I'm like, I didn't even approach. I was like, "Where did you get that?" And she goes, "Oh, my husband and I, we go road trip in Pennsylvania all the way to California. We go through Grand Island. We can never miss Balls. They have." I was like, "They have the best wings." And she's like, "You're just saying that. What the fuck?" I'm like, "I'm from Nebraska." And so she looks at my car, she looks at my place, and she's like, "Oh." She's still kind of sketched. I'm like, "I'll prove it to you. The back of that shirt says, 'Who needs Hooters?'" And then she finished. She's like, "When you got balls." And so those are the 2 times she didn't know anybody, but she like knew like she. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really funny. How about you?
So do you remember being new to selling books and you had like houses that you were scared of?
Yeah.
I had like, for whatever it is, the biggest house, like, or it was, yeah. So this is funny because like within my first 3 weeks of selling books, I really wasn't selling in like really big houses. They were like little ranches. But in this one neighborhood, only one house had a windy driveway and it was a 2-story. And I just would drive by it and I would like purposely knock when they weren't home because I just didn't like, I don't know. I was afraid. And finally, one day I drove by it and like, whatever, that's how the story goes, right? You drive by it and you're like, no, I just need to do it. You reverse, you go down. And so at the time, I'm a freshman at the University of Wyoming. My approach is always, I'm Sydney, I'm the college kid from Wyoming. And this one time, I don't know that I ever did it again either. I said, "Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm the college student from South Dakota." Like, and I don't know why I said it. I even like was thinking in my head, like, why? And she interrupts me and she's like, "Where?" I was like, "Rapid City." And she's like, "What high school?" And I said, "Stevens." She's like, "I went to Stevens." She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm selling books." She's like, "Get in here."
No way.
And then like the sales pitch was, "So you went to Stevens. Who'd you have for AP English?" "I had Mr. Schulz." "I had Mr. Schulz."
Oh.
And I was like, "So who are you?" And she was like, she told me her name, and we found out that her little brother was on homecoming court with my brother. And yeah, and then her husband was also from Rapid City. So
Wow.
yeah, they did end up buying books, but it was just like the shortest. It was actually like disappointing because it was like the shortest sale ever. And I just wanted to like, I was missing home by then too. So I just wanted to connect. But I was like, okay, no, I have to go. But I love that.
You didn't stay for 4 hours and cry.
We could have, but I was on schedule.
That for some reason reminds me, it's kind of similar, but you guys mind if I tell you a story similar to this?
Do it.
Okay.
Please.
Do it.
I think Nick, you've heard this too. It was the first and only Colombian I ever met selling books. And in fact, I didn't really ever run into many Hispanic families, and it was an interesting thing selling books as a Hispanic person. They're just a different vibe. But Colombia was playing in the 2014 World Cup. This is the summer I was super off schedule, but on that day I was like, I'm gonna be on schedule. And so I was knocking, and the game's on, and I knock on this. I'm wearing like this Colombian jersey, just because they were playing, and I knock on this door, and this lady just opens the door and she goes, "Are you Colombian?" I'm like, "Yes." And she was wearing like a Colombian jersey, and I'm like, "Are you?" And she goes, "Yes." I'm like, "They're playing." And she goes, "Yes, get in." And so,
Yes.
so we get inside and we watch James Rodriguez score what was then going to be voted the best goal ever. Or not best goal ever, best goal of that World Cup. And we like cried because Colombia hadn't made it, and Colombia hadn't been in the World Cup for 20 years, and they were good. And we cried, and at the end she's like, "So what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm selling these books." And her kids were a junior and senior in high school. They're gonna be, and like they needed help with science and AP classes, so they just bought a science and an AP book. But Claudia, Brago was her name.
Bravo.
In Pennsylvania, just of
Pennsylvania.
Nazareth, Pennsylvania. It was
I should have traded you. I sold in Georgia, and I had one of my school districts was completely Hispanic. They didn't even have classes in English sometimes.
no way.
So I learned to close in Spanish.
No.
Yeah, it was fun, but my Spanish has never been as good as it was that summer. That was
That's
fun.
interesting that they don't send people to like if you're gonna sell in Florida, like in Miami or South, like just get a group of like kids that just speak Spanish and like throw them at that territory. Or
I
like put 'em
wonder,
bilingual.
like what blows my mind is I had a couple of summers where I followed people who were I remember my first summer I worked over a guy named Vlad, and he was Russian. And like there are pockets where you could like send like if you can speak the language, you should just send them there, because like it's like the coolest
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And it, I mean, I honestly like it at least in my turf, like every time I tried to speak Spanish to a Hispanic family, they were always like so freaking nice, and they would.
Yeah.
My grandma was probably horrible, and they always fed me.
They always feed you.
Always fed me.
Yeah.
Same with all the Indian families. Every time I sat down with a family from the Southeast Asia, I always got a meal and a Coca-Cola.
In fact, any immigrant family, like I said, only one Colombian, but and I did run into Hispanics every once in a while, obviously.
Yeah.
But every time I did, they fed me. Every time.
Mm-hmm.
It never failed. Like if they opened the door and they were foreign, I'm like,
Yes.
dinner tonight.
Oh, great.
Yes. I felt that way though. That was like, especially like when I was working in Georgia and in Tallahassee, Florida, it was like you find like the one or two ethnic families, like, and you just hope you find them early, because they were like a guaranteed sit down, and like a lot of times they would buy, and then you felt comfortable in the neighborhood after that. So I wonder why that is, because yeah, I think the only time it didn't work is here. I actually live in my one of my turfs now.
Oh, that is interesting.
It's so weird.
Yeah, tell some stories about that.
Honestly, I've never had like anyone really pin me down, like you were that girl that did the thing.
No.
But I go to church. I told Nick this. I go to church, and it's the church that I go to is connected to the Catholic school. And it's like a really prestigious Catholic school. And my entire, and I worked my ass off that summer. I had one customer who went to that Catholic school, but I knocked on everybody's door, and I was like, my people, like, yes, my people. And they were like not having it. Like not a single other family bought. And so when I delivered to that family, they're like, boy, Sydney, like you really used our name. And I was like, I'm sorry, I tried. And they're like, no, we know you tried. You talked to everybody. I was like, I know, they just weren't having me. I even had some families from that school be like, you can tell people that I bought. I just don't want the product. And I was like, no, it's great. Can't I just like sell it to you? She's like, no, but tell them that I bought. I want you to do well.
Wow.
So now I go to church, and like every once, this happened more when I first moved here. Like I'm just older now, so I don't look quite like I did probably when I was selling books. But like my first 2 years living here, I'd be at church, and like I'd look to my like left, and someone would just be looking at me, and they'd just be like, and I'm like, I must have knocked on their door, and they're like trying to figure out where they met me before. So yeah, I don't need GPS to get around in my hometown.
I don't know that I know any alumni who is living in turf they sold.
Yeah, well, and it's the reason why I bring that up is that just north of me, there's a neighborhood that's all Macedonian families, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. They built their own church for their neighborhood, and I could not sell in that. They were just not. It was like the only time I met people that like weren't American that were like, no, we're good.
Oh, wow.
But I love that neighborhood. It's great. They were all really nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I the only thing that had similar to that was that there was like a town in my second summer where it was it was Phillips Academy in Andover. The Kennedys went to school there, super high, $50,000 a year, high school, and they like all lived in like this super big, very tight knit community. All the families did, and I got lucky. Outside of that, it's not to be stereotypical, but a lot of the teachers at the school were Indian, like from India, because they're super smart, like doctorates. And then so there was like a little village of like Indian people because they taught at the school, they knew each other. And the first house I knock on, she's the math teacher, not like a math teacher, she's the math teacher of the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bought 2 sets, one for her house, one for her classroom.
Wow.
And she wrote me a bomb testimonial. And so then I went around to every Indian family that was there that had kids that age, and they all bought. And then I went to the students with all the teachers' names, and then they all bought. That was the week I hit PC my second summer. The only time.
That's awesome.
It was just all these people. Those names didn't count for shit after that, because I went to like the next neighborhood, nobody knew them.
That's like
but
the worst
awesome.
is like rebuilding.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the same community, like, wow, God, they all bought. No, my kids aren't that smart to get on it.
Fun, though.
It was crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
That's so funny.
Funny times. Nick, you look pensive. What's going on? Are you running low on time or something?
A little bit, but not quite. I don't want to be rude.
I think it's time to tell the story.
Yeah,
we can do that.
Let's do the funny story. It's time.
Okay, so let's comment here. We're at minute 145.
Okay, this one's really short, but this one was like one that I just did not understand. This was actually my second to last summer. I had a girl following me who was really off schedule, which was funny because I was really off schedule that summer too. So she was following me, and it was funny because like she just needed to see someone like write business. So it's just like, whatever, like this area of my turf that we're in right now kind of sucks. This is why I didn't sell a crap ton of books. Listen to me. But like I remember we were in this neighborhood that was like pretty mid to low income, and we were having a sit down with I let the girl knock on like 3 doors in a row, and like nothing was happening, and she was getting really disappointed. So I'll make sure I'll just do one. And I did the next house, and it was this lady who didn't even live there. She was like some second cousin that was like helping take care of one of the daughters who was disabled. And she was like, yeah, I'll like listen to what you have to say. And I gave like the most quick demo, because I was just kind of like, I don't like, this is kind of weird. Like she doesn't even live at this house. So like I gave her a good sit down, but it wasn't like a long one. And she was just like, I'll take it all. I'll just take everything. And I was like, sweet. Shit. So I'm like writing it up, and I'm like, how much can you put down today? She's like, nothing. I was like, oh no. What about half? She's like, no, I can't put down half. What about a third? No, can't. A quarter? No. $20. Can you put down $20? And she's like, no, I don't have $20 on me. I was like, I need some money down. And she's like, I've got a 5. So she's like, give it to me. So
no way! You took her last $5.
I wrote a bag, and I took $5 down. And then for deliveries, she lives somewhere else, so I had to drive to wherever the heck she lives. And I pull into her neighborhood, and it's a trailer park, and I go, oh God, like this is gonna be great. This is gonna be so great. And
get your crew skills ready. Remember the order.
I know, I was ready to just crew her. I love crewing actually, but I was just ready to just whip out the best crew ever. And I show up, and she's like, here, and she had it all, like the bag, in cash. And I was like, oh, well, let me go back to my car and actually grab the books. Like, I was believing she was ever gonna pay, and she had it all. And then she tacked on more, and I was just like,
she got the bag and then some.
And then some. She got some for her family,
All
family,
right.
friends, for Christmas
My
presents.
Dang, girl.
I was just,
How
that
many
wasn't
units is
me.
that?
That was just pure luck. I never in a million years would have pictured that lady coming through.
Wow.
That's
You just
legit
never
a
know.
pony.
It's a good lesson.
That's legit a pony. Like I think that's the
Pony.
first, like that's like the biggest pony story that we've had. That was like a giant pony story
An actual
so far.
pony. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well,
I mean,
have
other people
one.
had ponies,
She's my
but this
only
is like a
one.
pony.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she had kids in all the age groups. So I just got really lucky.
Oh,
Fun.
wow. Well,
Well, it's
dang.
been a pleasure speaking with you, Sydney. This has been
you.
awesome. If you're ever in the Colorado world, hit me up. If you're ever in Lincoln, hit Andres up. Maybe we can all go to a Husker game next year.
Let's do
That's
it.
the
Let's do it next
plan.
year. Let's do
Oh
it.
yeah. I mean, they're playing Oklahoma in Oklahoma next year. That's going to be a good one, especially like next year when they're playing Oklahoma in Lincoln and we're maybe good enough to beat them, but I don't know, we'll find out.
That's right.
I believe.
Who do we got coming up next, Nick? I got for
Let me pull up the schedule. So, Meredith Gardner, she's on Wednesday, right?
I believe so.
Oh yeah, good old Meredith from Eagle Blitz, the land of Florida. A nice gator there. Then on Sunday, oh no, yeah, we've
Wow.
got another one. Who's that with? Somebody. I need to put the
Great.
names in the. I've got like the times blacked out. I need to put the names in there. But we've
Okay,
got some cool people. Who we got, Andres?
I got it right here. We got Anthony Conrad coming up. And
Don't
then
know.
Larry, yeah. Anthony's got a really cool story. I'm excited to hear about his story. And then Larry Anderson. These are people who
Oh,
reach out to us.
Larry.
Yeah, these are people who reach out to us to be on the cast. So that's actually exciting because we're getting.
Because they're like,
Larry's
we're
gonna have
inherently
some
interesting.
great stories.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then on New Year's, we're doing a special edition. I don't know what Nick is doing his, but each of us are doing like our own individual episodes where we're meeting up with our roommates from our summers and just having like stories about our personal like
Oh,
stories.
cool.
Like me and my two roommates from our first summer are just gonna chat and talk about that crazy first summer that we had. We had a pretty good summer. Steve sold like I think it was like 7,000 units and Josh sold 3,500 and I sold 4,000 something. So it was a good HQ and just
That's
talking about
great
like fun
HQ.
stuff we did. It was crazy funny stuff that we did. So that's on New Year's Eve. It'll be like earlier in the afternoon, so you can still go to your party and if you guys want to tune in. And then we have after that we have somebody's on the 10th. I think we're still confirming, and so on and so forth.
Well,
So, yeah, so
Eliav Cohen is on the 7th.
Oh, yep. Eliav Cohen is on the 7th. That's right.
And
He has a
then-
lot of stories.
That's what he said.
Yeah, so we've got a good lineup. Just keep tuning in. We'll start posting, kind of like cross posting from a business page that we're in the process of making with the logo and everything, and you'll be able to catch up and stay in tune and see who's coming next.
Yeah, so thank you for coming on. This is so fun. I'm glad that you gave us some time and some good stories and good perspectives. Yeah, so thank you so much. This has been a really cool project that I just had a random thought to do, and I'm glad I called Nick, and I'm glad we're doing this. This has been a good way to spend some afternoons. So
Oh yeah.
we'll see you
All
guys
right.
later.
Thank you.
Talk to
Bye-bye.
you soon. Bye.
See ya.